So I started setting up my online class, and I wish I would have started recording this from the very beginning, but about halfway through this rough draft, I thought it'd be a great idea to share this with other educators. Now, I know that there's a lot of sites out there that will help you set things up, like Google Classroom. For me, this is just helping me lay out an entire unit rather than doing it piece by piece, like one piece at a time. I feel it's going to keep the unit more consistent. It's going to feel more consistent for my students. And luckily, a lot of these things we were already doing. So the skeleton note thing, this video lecture was just them listening to me in class. They would have to study for Quizlet. They would get this video lecture question on Google Forms. The meeting Q&A, that's going to act like sort of group time that we would have in class. They're going to have a quiz, which we would normally give in class, but I'll just give it online. Then, we go to the next set of notes and basically we kind of repeat the process again. At some point, they're going to do some lab sketching. And I still have to build in a couple other things. Like, this is what I envision, like the most fundamental pieces of my classes. And, I need to incorporate some other things like a reading of a news article, a discussion of some kind. But this is the essentials of what my class looks like. And so for the skeleton notes, and this has worked out really well in the classroom, not just online, but before we start a unit, I have my students fill out skeleton notes so that when I am lecturing, they are not falling behind. They're not splitting their focus between trying to listen to me and trying to write large amounts of information at the same time. Plus, it keeps them organized because I'm forcing them or teaching them to use a Cornell note format type style. And most students in the end appreciate this because they feel as though they're not falling behind during lecture. No one's asking me, hey, can you please not move that slide? Or hold on, I'm not done writing yet. Because most of the writing is done outside of class. And this is, like I said, this is a homework assignment. So they don't do this in class. So after they do that, they typically come in and they listen to me, talk about whatever section we're on for that particular day. And so here's just a short clip of a YouTube video that I recorded. If not all of you are well aware of sea anemones and coral. Their name actually comes from a Latin root meaning stinging cells, and we'll talk.
When mechanical or chemical stimuli activate an external trigger, the lid of the cell pops.
With one of my students a couple of years ago. His name was Almar. He went to the beach. He was just, you can see my cabinets and my rug in the background. He was just doing it. And so what I'm able to do is I'm able to keep the notes and the lecture pretty much the same. So they're kind of just following along, filling out their notes. After that, I envision them studying their Quizlet terms for about 5 to 15 minutes. And so in Quizlet, I created a set. And again, it's really about pairing things up. This pairs up with what we covered in the lecture. So in that section that I'm going to have them watch, they should be very familiar with up to this highlighted term. Now, of course, there'll be a second lecture in which they'll need to be familiar with the next set of terms. But by that time, they should be familiar with everything from the top down to whatever one I happen to highlight next. The first one is always easiest because it's a smaller subset of information. So once they've had a chance to study those Quizlet terms, they are going to answer video lecture questions on a Google form. Now on this one, I happen to use Flubaroo. If you're not familiar with Flubaroo, you can use the Google form Quizizz. So that they have that set up in there somewhere. So that you can track what the responses were. And so the only reason I happen to like Flubaroo is because it allows multiple attempts for my students, but they have to score 100%. When it gives them back the results, it doesn't tell them what they got wrong. So they kind of have to go back and pay attention. If you want more details on Flubaroo, I'll include a link up here somewhere. So once they're done with the video lecture, and I I'm assuming this is done during the day. This I'm assigning more as a homework assignment. This one would be us meeting up again. The next time is me having a Q&A session where students come and ask me questions, and I would expect them to attend. Like if they have to attend school, they'll attend the Q&A session. And again, these are all details I kind of need to work out. And so, also here for the video question, it's open from a very specific time. So it opens up at 3 o'clock and it will close at 11:30. Now the Flubaroo, the one I'm using, it allows me to shut it down at a very specific time. So I'm not waiting up until 11:30 to see that happen. So once I'm done with my Q&A session, then I can go ahead and give them a quiz. And I'm either going to use Quizizz or Socrative. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Quizizz right now, only because it's going to help me organize my classes a little better. And the way that I look at this one is when I give them a quiz, we are going to, right now that I'm probably going to change this time, I just kind of arbitrary, but I'm going to give them maybe about 5 minutes to take this quiz. And of course the question pops up is, well, aren't they going to be able to cheat on this? Because they'll have their notebook, they'll have Quizlet. And the answer is yes, but I'm sort of offsetting that with Quizizz. So if you've never used Quizizz before, it's a pretty cool online assessment, kind of limited to multiple choice, but for what we got to work with right now, or what I have to work with right now, it's going to do the job. So as far as Quizizz goes, they're fairly easy to make. You can actually borrow other people's quizzes. So if you're kind of in a pinch, you can look up a quiz, borrow their info, and then adjust it to your own needs. So when I'm ready to give that quiz, so let's just say that we're going to give it at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. So 2 p.m. on Wednesday, I set the time where it's like, okay, it's going to be they're going to have till 2:05 to finish it. Even if it's 2:15, it won't really matter. This is because right here, they're going to have one attempt, so they're not logged in. And then down over here, they're going to have a timer. I'm going to shuffle the questions, and I'm going to shuffle the answer options, and then I'm not going to turn on the meme thing. And the cool thing is that with this particular quiz, you can set how long. So this one, to sort of offset the chance of cheating or the probability of cheating, they're only going to have about 5 seconds to answer the question. Now, again, I might have to change that. I don't know. But I'm going to give them about 5 seconds to answer this question, which isn't going to give them a whole lot of time to like hop to another tab, look for it, hop back, try to find the answer. It's just not like they're either going to know it or they're not going to know it. At least that's the way that I see it. So once we're done with the quizzes, we basically repeat that cycle. Now, of course, like I said, I need to include things like a reading assignment. I need to include things like an online discussion, something that's a little bit more rich. This is, again, the way I look at a very bare bones skeleton outline of what I'm doing. And so they'll basically watch video lecture part 2, which I need to include a link to. They'll study their new set of Quizlet terms for 5 to 15 minutes, all the way up to the new highlighted term. They will answer video questions on part 2. We'll have a Q&A session, so that's something that I need to insert here. So we'll do another Google Meet Q&A session. Now, it really doesn't matter if you're using Zoom or Google Meet, so long as there is a space where your students can see you and ask you questions. And then we'll have the lecture. They're going to have lab sketches, which I'm going to have links to. They will have a flowchart study guide. So luckily, again, this is something that they do in class already. They just have these basic terms here. And it really just connects the entire unit together. So it kind of gets them, out of that linear notebook mode but they use their notebook to fill this out into something that shows a few more connections between all the terms that they're looking at. And so that they're going to answer in Google Classroom. So there's just going to be a Google Doc with a grid 1 through 40, I don't know or 1 through 56, and they'll just go in and fill out the terms. And again, yes, it is totally possible for them to copy off each other. They can take a picture and send it to their friend. But these assignments are typically very low value anyway. I weight my grades, and so most of the weight is on the tests and quizzes. And again, I might have to adjust that in here as well. But at least for right now, this is my train of thought. Now, in addition to that, and then we'll probably finish up with an Adaria test. In addition to that, when they are finished filling out the notes, all those blank spots, I'm going to have a Flipgrid for them. So I've just created a Flipgrid where, just to check to make sure that notes have been taken care of, they'll have this here. This is just me sampling it for them so they know what to do. And then that way I can ensure that they did in fact either watch the video or at least filled in the blank spots, and they at least have the content somewhere in there. Now, of course, this is, I mean, big red flag is, equity. And I am going to have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis, and I'm going to talk with my students prior to assigning this type of work to make sure that they do in fact have access to stable internet, and they have their own device that the school is willing to lend out, so that they're not having to share with brothers and sisters who might be in the household also having to do an online homework assignment. And finally, I'm going to have some due dates on here, but really our learning management system, which we use School Loop. I'm going to go ahead and put in the dates in School Loop with additional links. They'll have access to this whole page so they can get a sense of where we're going, what they need to do, and they can jump ahead and do some of these things. So for example, if they feel like doing all the skeleton notes, they feel like watching both videos, just filling everything out, getting their Flipgrid done, totally fine. If they want to do that in a single day, I'm okay with that. But the whole studying and the video lectures, those will be given on specific days, so they're not just dumping information in at the last second, spilling it out, and then forgetting it right away. So this is really meant, in conjunction with Quizlet, is really meant to distribute their practice so they don't forget. I always talk to my students about the forgetting curve. It's to prevent that from kicking in, just absorbing it for a short period of time and then forgetting about it. Now, that is just, again, the bare bones of a unit. I need to fill it in with assignments that are a little bit more rich. Like I said, either a writing assignment, some sort of discussion assignment, definitely something that they are going to create on their own. So whether it's a presentation, whether it's creating a Flipgrid, whether it's creating a short YouTube video, whether it's having an online discussion with other classmates of some kind, I'll have to find ways to put that in here. But if we were going to go pure bare bones information, this would sort of do the trick. And now my job is to give them a richer experience with other assignments that we're going to bring in. Some of the things that I want to do is there's a great program. It's called Skype a Scientist. So I want to Skype a scientist or have them Skype a scientist and, talk to them about, different things that are going on in their field. Presentations are always a big one. Video assignments are always a big one. I do want to incorporate, for my artistic kids, some art in there somewhere. But again, over the next week or so, I have a chance to do that. But at least, like I said, basic setup is already there. So with all that, I'm including this, or I'm making this webpage to, discuss some of the things that I'm going to be using. Other tools that do the same thing. I'm going to be leaning more towards Google Meet, Zoom. Some people have some issues with using Zoom, which is fine. Easy Talks is another one, but any of these three basically perform the same function. Just some tips on just good virtual meetings, because it's a little chaotic unless you think about how that's going to run. One of the things that is been crucial, because I've been guinea pigging some of my students so far, is that you can mute your participants. So there'll be times where you unmute them, and times where they need to be muted as you're talking about a couple of things. Online assessments, again, Flipgrid is a great way to do that. I'm going to be doing one on Illuminate because our school runs on Illuminate. Talked about Quizizz. If you're not a Quizizz fan, Socrative does pretty much the same thing. I'm going to include some stuff on Google Classroom, Flubaroo, which I also happen to use, Google Drive, which is where I'm putting most of my files. And hopefully, like I said, my students are familiar with some of this stuff, that the transition over to the online environment isn't going to be that harsh for them. So hopefully you found that helpful.